it, not look
Yeah,
at
it
it.
is.
So, all right, Rylan and I are trying out something that's a little different tonight. Man, it is so. I don't. Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe we should just go back.
I
Give it
don't
a
know.
shot. We'll try it. You got to try new things, right?
You got to try new things.
Yeah, you got to try new things. So we're gonna work to do that appropriately.
So,
can you reach that my Bible over there?
Yeah. Shri said,
over the
way over. Shri told me that if I don't talk in the mic, you can't hear me. So, camera, talk in the mic, listen to you at the same time.
Well, but that time the mic was like kind of below us.
It was.
So
It was below
I don't know.
us on the stairs.
Let me make sure that we're live. Okay, good. There's Dana. Oh, you know what? I haven't changed something.
I feel like you're halfway off the screen too.
Hold on just a second, everyone. We're gonna make sure that we get the YouTube correct for the website here.
Oh wait, no, we're good. The screen was halfway cut off in your shot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was gonna scoot over.
All right, so let's get this.
Oh, here, I'll check the church feed.
Well, that's what. Yeah, I can tell you right now that that's not correct.
It's not working.
Yeah, it will just say. All right, let's copy this. All right, guys, give us just a second to make sure that we do this appropriately, and we'll have it set up. Hope everybody's doing okay. Dana, how's your day been? Oh, is my shoe over there? Oh no, I took my shoes off earlier. Oh man, that's the problem with this angle, this wider angle.
Both of his shoes.
Yeah, both of my shoes. It's me. Oh, Dana, why did you have to bust me on that?
All right. Hey, it's not on the Cedar Lane website yet.
I know. I'm doing. I told you. I knew that was the case.
These aren't marking some important spots.
No. Rylan has been so good, you guys, to join me here because I was here recording the sermon, and so we are. We're kind of doing it a little bit. It's a little. Everything was set up to record the sermon. We had everything kind of in the wrong.
So I'm assuming the sermon has something to do with you taking your shoes off.
It has nothing to do with
maybe like
that.
washing feet.
Okay, all right. So you want the real truth, Rylan? I'll give you the real truth. Okay, all right. So here is why I took my shoes off. All right, let's make sure. Okay, all right. So here's why I really took my shoes off over there when I was recording the sermon. It's because the camera angle was coming just such that I thought it might be cutting off just the top of my head. And I had already adjusted the camera so
half
much.
an inch shorter.
Try it again. If I adjust... Oh, man, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Sorry. Webpage is not quite up yet or the YouTube's not quite up yet on the webpage, but I think it's up maybe
try it again
on
now.
YouTube.
Now try it again. Yeah. Yeah, so I felt like if I took my shoes off, it would change the angle from the camera to my head just enough.
Just by a skosh.
Just by a skosh. It's still not there? Mm-mm. No, it is. It is, too. Look at it.
I'm refreshing it. Oh, it's there.
It is there. I told you it was there.
Hey, everyone.
There are all these little steps. Yeah, it was. Oh, that's right. I meant to say that I did it, Rylan, because it was a way of communicating the sacredness of the. It's really not true. That's not what was happening. Not this time.
We'll all be glad that you were set apart when you were doing that.
You know what?
I'll just say that.
I don't know. I don't know if I can look.
See what I did there?
Yeah, I did.
It's because your feet smell.
Look, I'm going to do this, and we're just going to
switch back?
Yeah.
So right now we're looking at a phone that's kind of up higher, but it's hard to look at it because we're not used to it. We're used to looking at the computer right here. So
yeah. And so it's we're just trying to figure that out.
Yeah, we're trying something new.
And it's stalling.
If you guys don't like it, just let us know. And if it's stalling for you guys, hey,
that's better.
Hey, you could just press a button and we could go back and forth. It'd be like a 2-camera sitcom.
Yeah, but the camera's just that much further away. I don't think it's not really that effective.
He's right.
Guys, we're just trying to experiment. We're trying to do some different things and see what we can come up with. So I appreciate everybody's patience. You know, everybody has really been patient this whole process. as we tried to figure out like what kind of stuff works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it. We were told that like even though some people liked that we were outside for Sunday morning this last week, that we were squinting too much
that's
because of the
bit.
sunlight.
And the birds were loud, apparently.
It was our wives. That's who told us that. So let's just be real. Let's be real about who it was.
They've been so helpful along this whole process.
They have been
telling us all the things.
They are angelic women
that we could do to improve what we're doing, and that's what we need. Right?
There's no fault in them. I appreciate their help and feedback. Love you, babe. Okay. So this is not just the hour where Rylan and I just hem and haw.
No.
We are actually in the middle of a study, and it is time for us to progress in that study a little bit today.
So last week, you were out of town.
I was out of town.
And I did the teen Zoom, so I missed what you guys were talking about, but you said Exodus.
Yeah, so last week we talked about the Exodus, and we talked about how it is. Like, first of all, we just kind of talked about that moment, why it was so significant in the life of the story of God's people. But then we spent some time, too, talking about...
so the literal Exodus, not the book of Exodus, but like when they leave.
Both.
Okay.
We talked about both those things. Yeah, in fact, we talked about how the whole Exodus story, when they leave, but then also they have this moment of crisis, whether God's going to be with them and God gives them law. Like, all of that really is this moment, and it all works together. It's kind of hard to separate those things out.
It seems like a cheat to put all those things into your one number 4.
Okay, all right. Well, it is maybe a little bit. It's like as if I just made one moment.
The whole book
the
of
Old
Exodus.
Testament.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Okay, that's a fair point. But
see, some people agree with me.
Yes. Okay. I don't know about that. I don't think she's talking to you. You're talking about Dana?
She's talking to me. Yeah,
no,
Dana,
she's not.
Dana says she thought so too. She said,
no, she's talking about somebody else in the chat.
I don't think so.
Yeah, we started talking about other things, and everybody in the chat they're just having their own deal right now.
They need to greet each other for a while.
Yeah, greet each other. Any rate, all that to say, yes, the Exodus, which is, if you want to think about it this way, Ryan, all of that stuff together is kind of the birth of God's people. Okay, it is the emerging of the nation, really. Okay. So yes, and I want to go ahead and say right now, if you think that complaint is valid about that moment,
here we
go. Okay, all right, get that, get those songbooks right there.
More songbooks?
Karen thinks we need a few more songbooks. Yeah,
making me do work.
There's some right there. You can just reach them. You have long arms.
Oh, here they are.
Yeah,
I see them.
Wonderful long arms. Okay.
I'm gonna take my jacket.
So if you think your complaint about about Exodus kind of encompassing too much, boy, are you about to blow a gasket when you find out what tonight is.
Number 5
It's going to be outrageous.
The rest of the Old Testament.
I wish that was not true.
Come on.
I wish that was inaccurate, but it is. See, look, Dana was talking about the birds.
Well, I think you could have been talking about both, Dana. Subconsciously, Dana was talking about both.
That is not true. You're wishing she was agreeing with you. Okay, so you ready for the next episode? So let's go through the first ones, all the ones that we've done before we do that. Okay. So briefly, because we're getting a longer list, right? So what was first?
Creation.
Okay, so number 1 is creation. Okay. 2,
corruption.
That's right. Which we normally think of as what?
It's like the fall of man. It's like sin.
Yeah, that's right. World. Right. Okay, and then the 3rd,
covenant.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The C's helped you out on that, I think.
It helps it's easier to remember.
So we're thinking specifically about the covenant with Abraham, but also beyond that too. Okay. So these 3 moments really make up they really make up the whole of the Genesis story, right? Together. And we talked about how with those threads, they are not really just singular moments in the story. They are that, but they are also threads that are kind of woven throughout Genesis.
Yeah, they're setting up the rest of the Bible, really.
That's right. The motifs that are present in those stories are present throughout the rest of Scripture. And that's what we're really doing with the Exodus story, too. It was really showing how, like, for instance, the Gospels, use the book of Exodus kind of as a template to show how significant what's happening with Jesus is in this that it's a new like fundamental moment, just like the Exodus was.
So what C word did you use for Exodus? Did you use catapulting?
There was no
catapulting
C word.
out of
no. There was none
out
of
of
that. We're
Egypt?
done. We're done with the C words at this point.
Careening.
There may be one later. Okay, it's conceivable at least that there will be a later C word, but
I think you didn't think hard enough.
I wouldn't count on it. Is what I would say.
It's gonna be really hard to remember then.
No, it's gonna be. It's actually. Well, Rylan, what if I told you that you could at least do it with the sound? How about that?
Okay.
Because today our next step 5. So creation, corruption, covenant, Exodus,
Catapulting
no,
out of Egypt.
Exodus, and then number 5 is kingdom.
Kingdom. Okay.
Okay, and so when we talk about kingdom, we're really thinking about this phase in the story of God's people, this phase in the story of God, which centers around the kingdom of Israel, kingdom of the kingdom expressed through this physical place in Israel. Okay.
Jerusalem, or like
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, but Jerusalem is going to be the capital, at least for some time.
So not a kingdom like where the castle is. Like
No,
what do we mean by kingdom?
Okay,
Let's
that's a
talk
great
about
way.
that.
What if we say like God's people expressed in like a nation state?
Okay.
Okay, you're actually okay. So we have to do a lot of nuancing here because we think about this as a phase of God's people. We're talking about something that lasts hundreds of years. Okay, several hundred years, and it's going to look different. So when you ask that question, part of me is like, well, it looks one way at about 1200 AD.
Yeah, it
AD.
changes a lot. Yeah,
it looks really different at about 600 AD. And so we really are talking about a period of time. We're talking about 500-600 years, in terms of the span of this. When I think of kingdom, I mean everything from the time that Joshua leads the people into the promised land, okay? Everything that will go through as long as they're an independent nation. Okay, we're going to talk about. I don't want to tip my hand too much about what the next phase is. We're trying to build drama and suspense, Rylan.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Okay. So
independent nation.
But so everything while they're an independent nation.
Okay.
And so.
So we skipping the judges.
Well, I think. Well, like I said, Joshua is coming in, so that
that starts it.
They really are. Yeah.
Okay.
The story of Joshua kind of starts it, and then the judges are. And what's unusual about the judges part of it is that they, we really think of them as like the nation of Israel at that point, okay? Because they are, but they're very, very loosely connected together, okay? Maybe in the same way that we might think of like the United States as being something different from when they were colonies to when they were really established in the in this kind of unified body, right? And what happens in the judge cycles, in the stories of the judges, is that you actually in the book of Judges, this is not really transparent. We don't sense this a lot when we read it, but the way Judges tells its story, it kind of focuses on leaders emerging from different parts, like different tribes. Okay, so they're these different tribes. Okay,
12 or 13. I don't. 2 half tribes.
Yep, that's right. And actually, you can really say 12 though, if you want, because the Levites are kind of spread out among all of them, right? So
they don't have like their own.
That's right.
Set land space.
That's right. Yeah. So there's really 12 different like states, if you want to think of them that way, territories. And Judges, like, is it pains to show like a leader emerges from this one, and then one from this one, and one from this one. It's not even, okay, but it's kind of expressing, and the Judges are really. Like timing is weird with them, okay, and the stories of the judges really function like these tribal warlords. That's the way I think. I really think that's the best model from our modern world of how to think of them.
Because we all know a tribal warlord.
Well, I mean, there's still places in the world where that's still true. Okay. Very much that was Afghanistan.
Yes.
Pre 9/11. and there are there are people who are kind of loosely associated with each other. They know this identity of they were children of Israel, were kinsmen, okay, but they don't necessarily have anybody setting policy for
everyone.
all
They don't
the
have a
territories.
centralized government.
No, not at all.
They're
Not at all.
they're spread out and they're each kind of doing their own thing
Yeah.
in
And
the
so-
promised land where they're supposed to be.
Right, and there's a leader might emerge in one of those tribes, okay, but then they have to kind of rally the others to come and join them in the battle against, many.
Do you think
other
this is like
brothers.
what God intended for them to do when they got to the promised land, to be like that? Because it's obvious, like later on, he doesn't really like the idea of them having a king, right?
Right?
Because he's their king. But is this what he wanted? Do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we can say for sure that what happens in the book of Judges is not what he wants.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, in terms of like the way it actually plays out.
Yeah.
Because they go through this cycle of sin, they abandon God, and then they need help, and then they kind of ask for God's deliverance, and they repent, and then God delivers them, and then they're okay for a little bit, and then there's this cycle.
Is it the judge that delivers them usually? Is that how it works?
Yeah. Usually the judge is a judge is raised up.
Yeah.
And God, well, technically God delivers them.
Yeah.
God uses a
Through
judge.
the judge. Yeah.
By the hand of so and so.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a better way to say it.
It's a theological way of saying it, but an important theological way of saying it. So that's the cycle, though, right? So there's this tension. There's actually a phrase that shows up. Have we ever talked to judges before? I don't know that you and I've ever
I don't
studied
know
this
if we've
together.
ever done this in a class or anything else.
Okay, so the book of Judges is one of my favorite books to study, and there's this thing that happens at the end of the book. It's very clear that like chaos is kind of taking over again. Maybe that it's that thread of corruption, chaos that's showing up. And so, if you just had to say a judge in your mind that represents chaos, do you have one that you would pick? I know which one.
Oh
I'd pick.
man, that represents chaos.
Or that like his story is
Like Samson.
Oh yeah,
Like
man,
Samson.
absolutely. Yeah.
But Deborah's pretty sweet too.
Yeah, Deborah's an awesome story, but like she doesn't sow chaos like Samson does.
She doesn't sow.
Like there's part in the story.
all
There's parts in
around
the story where Samson is like an active agent of
He
chaos.
definitely is. He ties those foxes' tails together.
Yeah, that's
Sets them
right.
on fire.
Well,
Pretty chaotic.
so after the story of Samson, there are a couple of stories that are really dark in the book of Judges, where some really terrible, terrible things happen. Violence and really abominable. Abominable. Yeah, that's right. Abominable things happen. And in the book of Judges, 3 times in the last few chapters.
Yeah, we're getting some interruptions on the feed or something for some people.
Okay.
And it looks like maybe it's back. So you guys just keep updating us on that. And there's not much we can do, I don't think, at this point. But
Yeah, we could drive somewhere else, but that's just, I don't know if that's our internet or yours. So hopefully it'll clear up a little bit. So there's this phrase that shows up 3 times at the end of Judges, and it says, and it's kind of as the chaos is kind of like after Samson, like things just devolve, and there's these terrible, terrible things that happens, and so 3 times there's this phrase, and it's actually the phrase that ends the book of Judges. Okay, it's the last thing it says. In those days, there was no king in Israel. All the people did what was right in their own eyes. Okay, now, by the way, this might be like the most American thing in the Bible, because Americans, we're kind of like we're like very anti-king.
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like that's the whole thing of what it means to be an American, right?
Yeah.
Is, nobody's the boss of me.
No taxation without representation.
Yeah, but like, go home, King George, this is like
because he was taking stuff and we didn't have any like say at all. He was just
and so that's kind of the myth, the mythos of our people, right? Is that we rejected
and we have liberty,
tyranny,
we can all
and so we have liberty too.
We all do what we want now.
And I think we read the story of, you're thinking about the story of Samuel when God says, when these people have asked for a king, they've not rejected you, they've rejected me.
Yeah,
and God, okay? And that's true. Okay, that's an important part of the story. But but a counterpoint to that story, or at least something that has to be held in tension with it, is this stuff in Judges, which is basically saying, hey, if there's not a king, everybody doing, when it says everybody did what was right in their own eyes, it's not saying that's a good thing.
Yeah. Right.
It's saying like everybody did what was right in their own eyes, like wanton idolatry or
Yeah.
violence, rape. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's saying that the absence of a king is kind of, everything's kind of spinning out of control. And so what happens after that? Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm thinking this through. They get through Exodus, they get into the Promised Land, they have this set of rules, and I've heard this. There's no actual like evidence that they ever followed those rules, right?
So, some of them, in particular, like the law of Jubilee and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, some of those.
Yeah.
And
we just don't have records of them doing that later. Yeah.
Definitely here they have these rules, but they're just disregarding them, and there's no one to like enforce them. Maybe
that's right. Like there's a story about somebody that kind of basically makes up his own priesthood. You know, I mean that's one of these kind of ending stories, and there's nobody to. There's no real enforcement.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, you know, it's kind of hard when back to your original question, like, is this what God intended for Israel? Okay, well, yes and no. Like God does want those people to be simply obedient to Him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the way that was playing out in history was not what God intended. It was instead people were kind of seeking. Like when it says in those days there was no king in Israel, and then it says all the people did what was right in their own eyes, like that very much reminds me of the book of Genesis, like around the time of Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, everyone's doing what they want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it seems like it's almost like the failure of the vision of Israel at this point. Like Israel's supposed to be this, but they're not going to be able to do it without a king. So instead, there's this other adaptation. You know?
And then later, that's what you were saying. God tells Samuel, I was supposed to be their king, but they rejected me, and so now they want
this person to be
king.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So any rate, so yes, that when they asked for a king, that is a failure on Israel's part, but it wasn't the only failure.
Yeah.
They had other failures too, and it's one of those things like they try to address one of them by doing something else, and they both are. Yeah. End up being struggles.
Is it the lesser of two evils, almost?
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. It's hard to say, right? Both of them ended up pretty bad.
Yeah, they end up not doing great with kings either, right?
Yeah. Okay, so and this is kind of in the next phase, all right? So we end up, and if you think about it, okay, so we have the story of the book of Judges, and Judges ends that way. There's chaos. Everybody does what they're on side, okay? And then what happens next? Okay, is we get the story of the book of Ruth in the canon, okay, and the way our canon presents it, right? Well, what is the book of Ruth except for this like romanticized origin story of the person that's going to be the king?
Yeah.
Right?
And I was just listening to a podcast today where they were talking about this exact same thing, and they said you read Judges and it's just all this horrible stuff happening, and then you read Ruth and it's just about people being nice to each other. Like,
okay, I don't know that I would agree with that. Okay,
I mean, there's a lot of nice things that people do for each other in Ruth.
Yes, it is. That is true.
Amongst all this chaos.
Yeah, that is right. There is some truth in that. Okay,
that's what they said on the podcast. I didn't say
what podcast was it?
It was Nomad.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, okay, I agree with that. Okay, but here's another undercurrent that's really important is that Ruth does say that there's this current of righteousness in there. Okay, but it's also a story about how Israel is kind of losing its way. Okay, if you think about the story of the book of Ruth, it's the story of Ruth is not an Israelite, right? She's a Moabitess. Okay, and her husband and her brother-in-law die, and her mother-in-law, who Naomi.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's
the Israelite.
Yeah, the Israelite. Yeah.
Right. And so Ruth comes and basically arranges through her romance with this man Boaz, arranges for the punchline of the book of Ruth is, and so Boaz said, "Okay, I'm going to go care for Naomi." Right. Well, there's a huge problem with that. Okay. What is Naomi? What is she when she moves back to Israel?
When she moves back to Israel,
Yeah, what is she?
she's Israelite.
Yeah, she's really what category of person is
A
she?
widow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She should have already been cared for.
Yeah.
Okay, so part of the story of the book of Ruth is there's a desperate widow. In fact, a pair of widows. Now, one of them wasn't from Israel, okay? But there's a pair of desperate widows, and they're basically begging, and nobody's taking care
Isn't part
of
of the
them.
story is she comes back and the person who's like supposed to take care of her just decides, I don't really want to do that.
That's exactly
and then
right.
Boaz says he's going to do it.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
so you're right. It's not just all about people being nice to each other.
Yeah, that's right.
There's some sadness.
It's. I think God's at work in this through people, but it's also about the brokenness of Israel. Like the story of Ruth is partly a testimony saying, this Moabite is saying, basically, I thought Israel was the place where widows were taken care of.
Yeah.
And it's an outsider calling Israel on the carpet for what they haven't done like they were supposed to. Okay. All right. But at the same time, it's also, the book ends with these words, right? These are the descendants of Perez. Perez became the father of Hezron. Hezron of Ram. Ram of Aminadab. Aminadab of Nahshon. Nahshon of Salmon. Salmon of Boaz. Okay. And it's kind of, this is the hook in the story. Boaz is the love interest, right? Boaz of Obed. Obed of Jesse, and Jesse of David. Okay, so that tips the hand in what this story is about. It really is this origin story of David's great grandfather. Okay, and it is connecting us both with the brokenness of judge society. Okay. And also with
it's a
a
nice
hopeful
segue
vision of the future in the king.
to Samuel.
Yeah. Okay. And so then, you're right. And so this takes us to the books of Samuel. And in the books of Samuel, we have the kingdom, okay, coming into reality. And now I've used the word kingdom to be all this part before. I know I'm stretching it just a little bit, okay. But in this phase of Israel's story, it is about God's people being continually called back to be who they are supposed to be, right? To their vocation, to their calling in the world, right? They are not naturally a people of righteousness and justice. They do not naturally follow the law, but God continually keeps bringing them back.
But part of the covenant was that they would bless the rest of the world, right? And so that's what he's calling them back to do.
Yeah. They're supposed to be a people of righteousness and justice to do that. Remember, that's all back in that that story in Genesis. But but they fail to do that. Okay, and they fail repeatedly. And God continues to work among the people to establish. Okay, if the whole people won't be a people of righteousness and justice, He works with people who will be pockets of that over the course of the study. Okay, or over the course of the history of Israel. Yeah. And so you have good kings and you have bad kings, and you have prophets who come and speak to those kings, trying to bring them back to the path. Ultimately, the story of the kingdom, the moment of the kingdom of Israel, we think about this as an era. It is both a time when we receive. One of the things that we receive is further clarity about what God wants His people to be. Okay, so the law is there, and the law provides this vision of what it means to be God's people. But the prophets, as they continue to call people back into it, they kind of give us more clarity about what that vision really looks like, what it really looks like. So, like for instance, Isaiah comes and says, You guys are proclaiming a fast day, but you know what the fast that I would call you to is? Practicing justice. So you're practicing this. They're following the letter of the law in some ways, okay, but they're departing from the spirit of it. And so we get that nuanced, like I feel like the prophets like infuse the structure that the law gives them for their society, but it infuses it with heart.
Yeah.
And
I think Jesus takes a lot of the stuff that they say, right?
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
a lot of His teachings later on.
That's right. So the things, so if we think about Israel, okay, and we think about this, what the story of Israel does, and like the role it plays in the overall story of God, that's what we really want, right? is it's kind of this balancing of a structure of faith and the heart of faith. Now, there's some people that overinterpret like this story to say Christianity is where you actually get the heart and move away from legalism. I don't think that's necessarily true. Like, there's a lot of heart in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now God's people abandon it.
That didn't keep them from being legalistic either. Like
Right? Yeah. It doesn't keep us from being legalistic Christians out there, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But there's a lot of heart there, and that's why I mean, how can we dare say that like part of the canon that is like half filled with poetry doesn't have any heart to it? Of course it's got a heart to it.
Yeah.
What we also have is the tragic failing of God's people to be able to obey, okay, or to sustain obedience, we might say, over the course of generations. So when we think about the kingdom as like this unified thing, there's only 3 kings. Okay, well, part of a fourth. Okay, we get.
What do you mean?
Okay, so the kingdom is like the kingdom of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
There are only 3 kings. There.
Oh, for the whole for Judah and the rest of the tribes, for like all the tribes.
Yeah,
together.
after those first 3 kings, everything just kind of blows apart.
Yeah.
And we have this division of the kingdom. There's a civil war moment, and the kingdom is never going to be unified after that again. It's just never going to be the same. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have.
And that's I didn't put this together for a long time, like way too late in my life. But the Israelites are later called Jews because they're from the tribe of Judah, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And because the rest of the tribes are scattered.
Yeah,
so really Judah's the only one that's kind of left there.
That's right.
So Jew doesn't necessarily mean all the Israelites.
It seems pretty obvious. Jew, Judah.
I know, but that's not nothing.
And it's more obvious in other languages.
Yeah.
German and other.
Yeah.
Other
so so that's when I really started understanding like there was like 11/12 of